Hi everyone, welcome back to another walk around Madrid. We're in a city full of color, plazas, art, and incredible stories. The fourth episode won't be a typical walk, because this time we're also hopping on public transit. We'll show you a few places that are perfect for a free afternoon. You can mix and match them however you like, or treat them as add-ons to our earlier routes. From quiet corners when you can escape the heat and city noise, to spots full of Spanish vibes and fun little stories. You'll find route maps, opening hours for the places we visit, and extra info for all our walks on our website, europeanribbon.com. You can watch this video in Polish or in English by switching the audio track in the YouTube settings. We also hope you've already joined our community of subscribers and that our walks are inspiring your own trips to some of Europe's most amazing cities. Up next, Madrid Strolls, 5 half-day walking ideas. Let's go! Our first idea is Retiro Park. If you've got a bit of time, instead of jumping straight on the metro, you can walk there from Puerta del Sol along Calle de Alcalá. Calle de Alcalá is one of Madrid's longest and oldest streets. It starts right at Puerta del Sol and runs east for a little over 6 miles. It used to be the road leading to the town of Alcalá de Henares. Today it's a grand avenue lined with elegant townhouses, former palaces, banks, theaters, and cafes. Right at the beginning, at the intersection with Calle Sevilla, you'll see the elegant Palacio de la Equitativa. It was once the headquarters of an insurance company and a bank, and today it's been carefully restored as part of a luxury hotel complex, with its distinctive clock tower. The facade, full of details, balconies, and sculptural elements, really sets the tone of Alcalá as a showcase street. Right next to it stands another landmark, the Antiguo Banco Bilbao Vizcaya Argentaria. The building was constructed in the 1920s as a prestigious headquarters for Banco de Bilbao, which is why it feels so formal and monumental. The most striking part, of course, is the roof. On top of the building stand dark, powerful quadrigas, chariots drawn by 4 horses, driven by figures that look like Roman charioteers. They symbolize strength, the flow of money, and modern commerce. The bank is a place where everything is constantly in motion. These silhouettes are so distinctive that they often appear in photos of Madrid, and even in movies. They've become part of the city's skyline, just like the Metropolis building or the Puerta de Alcalá. A few steps further, on the opposite side of the street, you pass the brick facade of the Church of Las Calatravas. It's the only surviving part of a former royal convent of nuns, associated with the military order of Calatrava. Wedged between taller, newer buildings, it stands out thanks to its Baroque details and the cross of Calatrava motif. If you happen to find the doors open, it's worth stepping inside. The rich Baroque main altarpiece in gilded wood is considered one of the more interesting examples of this style in Madrid. Walking further, we reach one of Madrid's most recognizable corners. This is where the famous Metropolis building stands. And right next to it begins Gran Via, which we talk more about on our third walk. If you haven't seen that episode yet, it's definitely worth catching up on, because that's another really interesting part of the city. But for now we stay on Calle de Alcalá. A little further on our side of the street, we pass another interesting church, San Jose, with its richly decorated facade opening directly onto the busy avenue. An 18th century church with an art-filled interior and a neoclassical main altar. On the opposite side, you'll see the monumental, highly detailed facade of the Bank of Spain. And a bit further ahead, the impressive entrance to the Instituto Cervantes, one of Spain's most important cultural institutions worldwide. We finish this stretch of the street at one of Madrid's great symbols, the Cibeles fountain, which we visited in our second walk. It's surrounded by important buildings and a square many of you will recognize from Real Madrid's title celebrations. From here, it's just a short walk to the greenery of Parque del Retiro, where the atmosphere of our walk becomes much calmer. Continuing uphill along Calle de Alcalá, you'll see a stone gate starting to appear on the horizon, the Puerta de Alcalá. This former city gate was built in the 18th century, during the reign of King Charles III. It has 5 openings, 3 large rounded arches and 2 smaller rectangular ones on the side. Up close you can see carved coats of arms, decorations and inscriptions commemorating its construction. Today it no longer serves as a city gate, but it's one of Madrid's most iconic landmarks. It shows up on postcards, in movies and even in songs. Standing by the Puerta del Alcalá, all you have to do is look to your right to spot the entrance to Retiro Park. Park del Buen Retiro, or simply Retiro Park, is one of locals' favorite places for walks, picnics, and a break from the city's hustle and bustle. The park's origins go back to the 17th century, when it was created as part of King Philip IV's royal residence. It was meant to be a pleasant retreat from court life, hence the name Buen Retiro, meaning pleasant rest. For many years the grounds were reserved exclusively for the royal family and their court. Under King Charles III, often called the Good Major for how much he did to develop the city, the gardens gradually began to open to the public, as long as visitors were properly dressed and behaved impeccably. In 1760, on land reclaimed from the old Pounds, the Royal Porcelain Factory of Buen Retiro was built, and you can still admire its fine pieces today in the display cases of the Royal Palace. After 1868, when the estate passed into the hands of the city following the revolution, the gardens became a truly public park for everyone. Today, Retiro covers about 300 acres of parkland, a huge green expanse right next to Madrid's very center. There are broad avenues, wilder, more wooden corners, French and English style gardens, exhibition pavilions, sculptures, and fountains. 17 monumental gates lead into the park, and all around you'll find monuments dedicated to famous Spanish writers, artists, and national heroes. At the heart of the park lies the Estanque Grande, the Great Pound. It's not a natural lake, but an artificial basin laid out in the 17th century. In the past, mock naval battles were staged here for the amusement of King Philip IV. Today, it's all about peaceful rowboats drifting across the water. Join us in Retiro Park for a leisurely late afternoon stroll through Madrid. After we enter, we turn left toward a low orange and white pavilion with glass walls. This is Casa de Vacas, literally the house of cows. The building was created in the 19th century as an actual dairy. Cows were kept here so that fresh milk could be sold to people out for a stroll, to drink right on the spot. Later, Casa de Vacas became a fashionable dance hall called Pavilion, then fell into ruin until it was rebuilt in the 1980s and turned into a cultural center. Today it hosts exhibitions, concerts, and theater performances, often free of charge, so it's worth popping in if you find the doors open. From Casa de Vacas, we continue deeper into the park until we reach Casita del Pescador, the fisherman's lodge. This small 19th century pavilion was built during the reign of Ferdinand VII, as one of the king's whims in the more private part of Retiro. It stood by an artificial pond and served the king as a quiet place to relax and go fishing, away from the court. Today it's simply a charming corner of the park and a popular photo spot. And for us, another stop on our walk through Retiro. From Casita del Pescador, we return to one of Retiro's main avenues and stroll at a relaxed pace toward Plaza de la República Dominicana. Around Plaza, hidden among the trees. In the center stands an equestrian monument to General Arsenio Martínez Campos, the man behind the 1874 Pronunciamiento, the military declaration that restored the Bourbon dynasty to the throne. The general on horseback, as if just after battle, with a cloak thrown over his shoulder, towers above a stone pedestal decorated with bronze standards and war trophies, all surrounded by a small pool of water. This is one of two equestrian statues in Retiro. Set back to back, the general symbolically covers King Alfonso XII, whose monument we'll see in a moment by the Great Lake, the Estanque Grande. The monumental monument to King Alfonso XII stands on the eastern side of the lake. It's not just a statue, but an entire ensemble. A tall column, topped by a statue of the king on horseback, surrounded by a sweeping semicircular colonnade, roughly 290 feet long and almost 100 feet high, with steps leading straight down to the water and stone lions on either side. The design was created by architect José Grases Riera after a competition announced in 1902 by Queen Maria Cristina. And the whole complex was completed and ceremonially unveiled in 1922. Today it's one of the most recognizable views in Retiro Park, and a favorite spot for locals to rent a rowboat and take a short spin around the lake. From the monument to Alfonso XII, we leave the lake behind and head deeper into the park, walking toward an elegant, long red brick and glass building. This is the Palacio de Velázquez. It was built between 1881 and 1883 for the National Mining Exhibition as the main pavilion showcasing achievements in mining, metallurgy, ceramics and glass. The architect was Ricardo Velázquez Bosco, whose last name gave the palace its current name. It's a long neoclassical red brick pavilion, decorated with bands of light-colored ceramic and crowned by a large glass dome in the center, supported by iron structures. Daylight pours in naturally through the glass roof. Today, the Palacio de Velázquez is a branch of the Museo Reina Sofia and serves as a venue for temporary contemporary art exhibitions. Admission is free, so if there's an interesting show on, it's worth popping in, even just for a few minutes. The same goes for the building standing right next to it, reflected in the water, the Palacio de Cristal. This crystal palace was built in 1887 for the Philippine exhibition as a giant greenhouse for exotic plants from what was then a Spanish colony. It was designed by the same architect as the Palacio de Velázquez, Ricardo Velázquez Bosco, inspired by London's famous Crystal Palace. An iron structure sheet entirely in glass, with a central dome and a ground plan in the shape of a Greek cross. It stands beside a small artificial lake with a little bridge and palm trees. The site of this glass palace by the water is also one of the most iconic images of Retiro. From the Palacio de Cristal we turn toward the Rose Garden, one of the most classic parts of Retiro. La Rosaleda was created in 1915 at the initiative of then Major Carlos Prast and designed by the royal gardener Cecilio Rodriguez, who modeled it on the Rose Garden in Paris's Bois de Boulogne. It's a compact formal garden laid out with paths, pergolas and a central fountain, where in season several thousand rose bushes in dozens of varieties burst into bloom. A favorite spot for strolls and photos for both locals and visitors. From the Rose Garden, let's make our way to one of the most remarkable works of art in the park. The Fallen Angel statue from 1885 by Ricardo Beiver. It stands where the Royal Porcelain Factory once stood, on Plaza de Ángel Caído, and is considered one of the very few public monuments dedicated to Lucifer. The contorted angel, wings spread wide, slips down a rocky pedestal while a large serpent coils around his body, a scene inspired by John Milton's Paradise Lost, full of drama and movement. From here we head toward the southeast corner of the park, to the Bosque del Recuerdo, the Forest of Remembrance. This contemporary memorial, created in 2005, is dedicated to the 191 victims of the March 11, 2004 terrorist attacks near Atocha station in Madrid, as well as a police officer who died a few weeks later during an operation in Leganés. On an artificially grassy hill, 192 trees were planted in total, 170 cypresses and 22 olive trees, encircled by a narrow water channel and a path leading up to the top of the mount. It's also worth noting that until the 1970s, Retiro was home to the city zoo. In 1972, it was moved to the Casa de Campo, where the enclosures and pavilions for the animals could be much larger and more modern. A visit to this modern Madrid Zoo will be our next idea for a free afternoon in the Spanish capital. The Madrid Zoo Aquarium, Zoo Aquarium de Madrid, is a huge zoo and aquarium complex in Casa de Campo Park, on the western side of the city center. The easiest way to get here is by metro, then walk a short distance through the wooden grounds of Casa de Campo, which in itself makes for a pleasant stroll. Although Madrid's first zoo was founded by King Charles III in 1770, it has been in its current location in Casa de Campo only since 1972. It covers more than 50 acres and is organized into themed continents, with animal enclosures and dolphinarium and an aquarium building set inside a distinctive glass pyramid. More than 1,000 animals live here, representing several hundred species, from lions, giraffes, rhinos and gorillas to koalas and giant pandas. It's one of the few zoos in Europe where you can see them, all the way to sharks, sea turtles, and colorful coral reef fish in the aquarium's 35 tanks. A fun bit of trivia is Madrid's long panda story. This is where Chulin was born, the first panda in Europe to be born in captivity through artificial insemination. It is a very family-friendly stop. You can easily spend a few hours here, combining animal watching with shows, feeding times, and breaks at the cafes scattered throughout the grounds. The Museo Arte Público is a great option for art lovers who don't necessarily want to spend their time inside a traditional museum. It's an open-air free museum without walls. Set along the Paseo de la Castellana, underneath the overpass that connects Juan Bravo and Eduardo Dato streets. Right where there used to be a fairly dull leftover bit of urban space. The project was created in the 1970s at the initiative of artist Eusebio Sempere, who wanted to bring Spanish abstract sculpture to people in the most literal way possible, so you'd pass by art on your way to work or out for a walk, not only behind a ticketed museum entrance. Today there are 17 sculptures here by major Spanish artists, including Juan Miró, Eduardo Chillida, Pablo Serrano, Martin Chirino, and Semper himself. One of the most spectacular pieces is Chillida's La Sirena Varada, a more than 6-ton concrete sculpture suspended under the bridge on steel cables. The easiest way to get here is by metro, which practically drops you at the museum. Right next door, it's worth noticing the elegant Edificio ABC Blanco y Negro, today known as Edificio ABC Serrano, the former headquarters of the newspaper ABC. Its richly decorated facade from the turn of the 20th century, along with preserved Art Nouveau style interiors and stained glass, make a striking contrast to the museum's modern abstract sculptures. Nowadays, it houses an upscale shopping center, when you can stop in for a coffee, do a bit of shopping, and take a closer look at the building's beautiful facade. Another option for an extra afternoon walk is the area around Moncloa Square. A great place to see Madrid from above. Pop into an unusual museum, and if you have more time, even head out to El Pardo. Faro de Moncloa is a slender viewing tower, about 360 feet tall, topped with a round dish-shaped observation deck that's easy to spot from far away. It was built in 1992 when Madrid was the European capital of culture, as a combined lighting and communications tower with an observation platform. A glass elevator whisks visitors up to about 300 feet, where a panoramic viewing deck awaits. The easiest way to get here is by metro. Get off at Moncloa station, and from there it's literally just a few minutes walk to the tower. Right next to the tower, you'll find the Museum of the Americas, a large neo-colonial building with Museo de América written over the entrance. It's one of Madrid's most interesting museums and still surprisingly under the radar for most tourists. Inside there are more than 25,000 objects related to the history and cultures of the Americas. From prehistory to the present day, you'll see excellent collections of pre-Columbian archaeology, ceramics, sculptures, masks, elements of dress, colonial art from that period of the Spanish viceroyalties, and rich ethnographic collections, everyday objects, textiles, jewelry, and musical instruments from different religions of the continent. It's a national museum under Spain's Ministry of Culture and a great choice if you're interested in pre-Columbian civilizations, colonial Latin American art, or simply want to hop over to the Americas for a while without leaving Madrid. If after Faro and the Museo de América you still have time and feel like a little trip out of town, it's good to know that buses to El Pardo leave directly from the Moncloa bus station. From the Intercambiador de Moncloa, you can catch a city bus that takes you about 25 minutes and runs roughly every 15 minutes during the day. El Pardo itself is a small town surrounded by one of the best preserved Mediterranean woodlands in Europe, the Monte del Pardo. Since the 15th century, this area has been a royal hunting ground and a favorite winter retreat for Spanish monarchs. The main attraction is the Palacio Real del Pardo. It grew out of a hunting lodge built in the early 15th century. In the 16th century, Emperor Charles V expanded it into a Renaissance alcazar. And later kings, especially Charles III, continued enlarging and embellishing the residence. After the Spanish Civil War, General Francisco Franco made El Pardo his official residence and lived here until his death in 1975. Today the palace is managed by the state institution, Patrimonio Nacional, and serves as the official residence for visiting heads of state. At other times, it is open to the public for guided visits. The interiors are truly impressive. The staterooms are densely filled with furniture, paintings, and above all, tapestries. Many of them woven at the Royal Tapestry Factory of Santa Barbara, from designs by artists such as Goya, created specifically for each room. To see the Faro, the Museo de América, and still fit in a bus trip to El Pardo without rushing, it's best to set aside pretty much a whole day. But it's a day that shows Madrid and its surroundings from a completely different angle. From above, from behind museum display cases, and from inside a royal palace. Our next idea? Let's add a little treat for public transit funds. The museums of the Madrid Metro. The first is the famous ghost station Chamberí, a preserved section of the original Line 1, opened in 1919 and closed in the 1960s. Now restored as the Andén Zero Museum. As soon as you step inside, you're basically traveling back in time. A curved platform, white tiles, old advertising posters from the 1920s and 1950s, vintage ticket booths. Everything looks as if a train from 50 years ago might pull in at any moment. And in fact, modern trains still pass through. But they don't stop here, because the curved platform turned out to be too short for the new, longer trains. That's exactly why the station was taken out of service. After the restoration, it's been frozen forever in the 1960s, a time capsule hidden inside a working metro line. The second place is the historic metro train exhibition at Chamartín station. On one of a disused tracks, 12 restored trains are lined up, all of them having run in Madrid from 1919 to the mid-1960s. You can get a close look at the interiors of the cars, the technical details, and dozens of old maps, signs, uniforms, and pieces of equipment that show how the metro has changed over the last 100 years. To round out today's itinerary, we saved Plaza de Toros de Las Ventas for last. Madrid's monumental bull ring and the Museo Taurino, a museum devoted to this controversial tradition. This is the largest bull ring in Spain, with seating for around 24,000 spectators. It was built in the 1920s in the distinctive neo-mudéjar style, with red brick, arches and colorful ceramic coats of arms representing all the provinces of Spain. Right by the main entrance to Las Ventas stands a remarkable bronze monument, Estatua a José Cubero Sánchez, El Hillo, by Luis Sanguino. It shows the matador as if lifting up in the air, muleta in hand, braced against the bull and a tall vertical block. At the base you can see the figures of spectators and members of his cuadrilla, his team in the ring. The whole piece feels like a single frame frozen in time, a moment of glory and farewell, all at once. The statue commemorates José Cubero Sánchez, known as El Hillo, one of Madrid's brightest bullfighting talents, who died tragically at just 21 after a fatal goring by the bull during a bullfight in Colmenar Viejo in 1985. On the pedestal you'll find dedications and inscriptions that speak to his legend. A bullfighter died, an angel was born. Which is why many locals see this monument not only as a tribute to the world of bullfighting, but also as an emotional memorial for bullfighting Madrid as a whole. Even if you don't plan on seeing a bullfight, it's worth coming here just to see the building from the inside and visit the Museo Taurino. This small museum is located off the Patio de Caballos, and inside you'll find, among other things, Goya engravings, costumes, hats and capes worn by famous matadors, as well as exhibitions showing how bullfighting has been woven into Spain's history and culture. Las Ventas stands at Calle Alcalá 237 in the Salamanca district, the same grand avenue where we began today's video. The easiest way to get here is by metro. Get off at Ventas station, where the arena practically rises up right above the station exit. It's hard to imagine a more spectacular way to end your day in Madrid. We hope our ideas have inspired you and help you plan your own slightly less obvious way to explore Madrid. Thanks so much for being with us. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and join us in the future episodes as we hit the road again around Spain and beyond. See you next time!